And also, Gado has captured this very aptly in today's standard on the freedom of the press. And this is what he has drawn. This is how the plight of a journalist is in the world as well. Authoritarianism, free press, dictatorship, terror, corporates, fake news. And you can see also the fake news carrying there the digital petrol as well. And you can see the journalist is a person who is waiting to be hanged there on the news there, right? So we have with us our panelists, and we'll love to hear also from Peter Biar Ajak, who is the Director of International Growth Center from South Sudan, to tell us more about what is happening in South Sudan, especially to our journalists, what is happening also to some of our workers, especially Kenyan workers. We understand the Sudan 4, as we call it here at home, are still detained in the country, and there was an appeal for them to be released or to quash that particular pronouncement from the courts that they should be jailed for 75 years, right? Peter, you're aware of this?
No, I'm aware of the case, yes, the massive corruption case.
But you can talk about the press freedom and also that particular case in itself, yes.
Well, Debarl, this situation in South Sudan has just continued to go from bad to worse. When we got independence in 2011, we had a lot of hopes that after so many years of fighting for our independence, now we were finally free. Only for us to descend into what is now really an anarchy, a situation of anarchy. It's not just only the journalists that are suffering. Nobody make mention of the regular average citizens of South Sudan who are suffering, who are going through a lot of difficulties. I mentioned to you, Debarl, that I just came from a trip where I was in Addis Ababa,
yes,
meeting with the IGAD, AU, and the UN officials there on this case of South Sudan, because we pretend that the peace agreement that was signed in 2015 is actually working. We have this man from Botswana, the former president Festus Mogae, is chairing this Joint Monitoring and Evaluation Commission. And he has these committees that meet every once in a while, and they issue reports, but they're not really monitoring anything. The situation has just completely got out of control. There are reports now that if the current situation in South Sudan continues, by the end of the year, half of the population would either have starved to death or they would have fled to the neighboring countries. And when you talk to IGAD, AU official, I met the Kenyan ambassador to the African Union when I was in Addis Ababa. And what you hear is South Sudanese leaders have been unable to put the national interest above the individual interest. And we in the region and African Union cannot really do anything until South Sudanese leaders are able to resolve their problems. Okay, I asked them, is South Sudan crisis now limited to South Sudanese? Is it limited to the borders of South Sudan? Now we have more than 1.7 million people living in the neighboring countries as refugees. The Kakuma camp has doubled beyond what it was during the midst of the 21 years of independence. Uganda is hosting nearly 1 million refugees. They're competing with local communities and host communities in those countries. We have militias that are crossing to Ethiopia to go and raid children and cattle and kill people. We have now our good friend Taposas who are armed. They will be raiding your brothers from Turkana. The same thing with Karamojong. This is a regional crisis. And if our leaders in South Sudan have been unable to put the interests of the country above the individual interests, what about the regional leaders? Have they really been able to put the regional interests above the individual interests? Because no country is benefiting from the crisis in South Sudan, whether financially or security-wise or diplomatically, is making all of us look very bad. What I told IGAD when I was in Addis, I told them, it's okay to accept failure. If you cannot solve a problem, it's okay to accept. All I need you to do, go to the AU chairperson and tell them we are not ECOWAS. We are a bunch of disorganized bunch, and we cannot really resolve this crisis. So we want the African Union to come in and see what they can do, because the situation in South Sudan has just continued to deteriorate. When I was in Juba last week, and when I was in Juba, you can see the desperation in people's eyes. Literally, the whole country is starving. Even in Juba, people are facing very difficult challenges. If you go to a restaurant to try to get a food, you have like these young men coming to ask you that they haven't ate for the last 4 days, and you should try to maybe buy them some food. This is the level of desperation in South Sudan. And I don't think this crisis is difficult to resolve if 4 countries, Kenya, Uganda, Ethiopia, and Sudan, come together. And there is no reason why they should not come together, because at the end of the day, the state that is South Sudan is meaningless if it has no people in it. And I just mentioned now, if this crisis continues until the end of the year, people are either going to die or they will move to your own countries. And this will create a regional crisis. So the onus now is really on the regional. I keep telling them, the reason why I'm here in Addis is we have been unable to resolve this crisis in South Sudan. You cannot just tell us, go and resolve it. If we were able to resolve it, I would not be here. But you are our brothers. If our house is on fire, you cannot just sleep comfortably in your house, pretending that the fire will die once it burned my house. It may also come to you. And I think this is what we need. I know Kenya is going through elections. There are a lot of difficulties going on in this country. But it's very, very, very important for a new political process to be restarted in South Sudan that will once and for all address the crisis of leadership that that country is facing.
Do you think also Kenya maybe will suffer from, so to speak, the brothers keepers fatigue? If you're not really actually putting your house in order for the longest time, we maybe dedicate our resources, our time, our diplomats to come and try and negotiate for peace in the country. And still you, as a country and the leaders there, some of them want to really profiteer from this particular war that is going on in South Sudan. So don't you think also as maybe the neighboring countries, we are suffering from that particular fatigue right now? We feel now it is up to you maybe to solve your issues, because it seems nothing is really giving, even as much as we put our time there. I don't know what you think.
No, Debarl, and that is a fair point, and I keep hearing that, the onus is on you, South Sudanese. You need to resolve your problem. And there are a lot of different things being done. If you look at even the level of young leaders, I remember in January I organized a young leaders forum here in Nairobi that was attended by nearly 60 young South Sudanese leaders from all over the country, from the diaspora and from the region, where we discussed how do we move the country forward. Those activities are going on. But if you look, the problem in South Sudan is you have people that are carrying guns that have taken the whole country hostage. And the way in which they are calculating, they're looking at very short-term things. They're not looking at the long-term viability of the country. They're looking at a short-term situation. And there is no space for people to really express themselves, to organize, and to be able to bring about internal change. And this is where we need help from outside. Yes, during the 21 years conflict, that was something that was beyond, and there was a lot of countries that were engaged in resolving this crisis. But every country has gone through crisis, even you people. During the 2007 general election, you were busy here butchering each other until you have Kofi Annan come and get your leaders together, and they were able to solve it. There was a real agreement that was reached. Right. This is what we are asking. Yeah? Let you people put pressure on our leaders. Pressure such as sanction. You cannot just say we are tired. What have you done? We are saying put targeted sanction on individuals. They come here and they are being visited by very senior people. You wonder what is going on. But put pressure. We're talking about this a situation of war, arms. We are a landlocked country. There's no way we can get arms if you people don't want us to get arms. The same thing with like finances. Our financial industry is controlled by the Kenyan banks. Right. So put pressure on our leaders. You are not doing that. In fact, some Kenyans, and even with your politicians, they have also taken side. Now with the election, they have their buddies in South Sudan that are maybe giving them money. And no one is looking at what is the long-term viability of South Sudan and how does South Sudan crisis become their own. Because in the end, as I mentioned to you before, South Sudan is now awash with arms, okay? Just imagine that it's awash with arms. We have the tribe that we have at the border, Turkana and Taposa, they are all rivals. They keep raiding each other. And I can tell you, if South Sudan descend into anarchy, all these groups are going to form tribal militia formation. It's like your parties, your Jubilee and your NASA. Now they are armed. And they will be crossing borders. By the way, they crossed to Ethiopia and killed and raided something like 200 children. And killed a bunch of people, took a lot of cattle. They're going to be crossing to Kenya. If this is a risk that you are willing to entertain, just simply because you have individuals that are benefiting from the crisis in South Sudan, okay, be my guest.
Debarl,
Yes.
What Peter is talking about is real. A week ago, I had the opportunity to talk to one of the South Sudanese general who really gave me a fairly good perspective on what's happening on the ground. I think short-term, mid-term, we're looking at genocide. The countries are awash with arms. The countries are awash with warlords, okay, and would form camps. And this general perspective is that the country will not have peace if Riek Machar is not part of that peace. That fellow is a Dinka, is not a Nuer. And so this is not only South Sudanese problem. It is an African problem. If it was happening in Europe, the entire Europeans will be around, to solve. Will you see the refugees problem, what's happening? We cannot just look at it and just stay aside and say, let international community come. And it is international community who are tired of Africa, and it's true.
Mm-hmm. All right, Captain Wanderi, you think...
I am listening to Peter, and he is optimistic and underestimating the problem in the Sudan. In my past work life, I have had occasion to deal with people displaced from Sudan as refugees. Now, at the moment, he said 1.7 million. Actually, it is 3 million people who have left Sudan, South Sudan so far, out of the 12 million population. As we talk, yes, the international community is tired of South Sudan. The Japanese contingent of 350 troops has withdrawn. Yesterday, the United Kingdom government sent 35 troops in a move to send 400 troops to support the mechanized units of the United Nations mission in Sudan. Mm-hmm. That's UK. Now, let's come to Africa. Today morning, the first report that we should be debating here is a move by the largest bank in East Africa, yes, Kenya Commercial Bank, to withdraw and close its branches in the Sudan. So what does that mean? It means that Kenya is beginning to feel the impact and the pinch of the conflict in Sudan. As we talk here, Dindin's town in Unity State is virtually empty because of ethnic cleansing and people moving away from town because of hunger. So we are talking of massive displacement of populations. We are moving towards genocide and imposed genocide on the people of South Sudan. Imposed in the sense that when you deny a population access to water and food, you simply killing young children. In fact, the number of stories coming out of Sudan, South Sudan, of children going to the children's hospital in the country, in Juba, yes, and dying, are horrifying. These are not things we should be seeing in Africa. And we've said here before, and Peter is right, to the extent that we cannot have African leadership as a club of bad boys, a club of bad boys. The President of the Republic of Kenya, the Prime Minister of Ethiopia, the President of the Republic of Uganda, they have the capacity and the ability to stop the genocidal attacks on certain communities in South Sudan. They have the capacity because they can put sanctions. Yes, the Global Arms Treaty is clear. Kenya and Uganda are the front lines, are the frontline states in terms of the movement of arms that are being used to foster conflict in Sudan. And if Kenya and Uganda was to step their foot down, or even Ethiopia and Sudan, that's the northern part, then the war in Sudan, in South Sudan, would end.
Thank you. Let's hear from Dr. Apollos.
We have our own problems, and they're enough. Museveni, Uhuru, Ethiopia, we have a tray full of our own problems. But we have institutions in place to address the issues of South Sudan. We have mandated IGAD, we have mandated the African Union. But if you have ever gone to Djibouti, to IGAD headquarters, and walked around the office, you would see the agony of those guys. Those guys report in the office at 9 a.m. in the morning. They read newspapers. At 1 o'clock, the Muslim bells ring. In Djibouti, at 1 o'clock, you must go to sleep. You go to bed. You sleep from 1 p.m. to 7 p.m. in the evening. So these guys do not work. If you ask a guy in a computer, what are you doing? He will look at you and wonder what kind of a question you're asking. Because these guys do not work. What they do in their computers is to try to prevent their jobs. Go to Addis Ababa and go to the African Union and look at those of people who are working in the office. For them, they are worried about their work. They are worried about the position papers. They write a position paper. They go and read the paper in Banjul in Gambia about South Sudan. So that is the work they do. They do not rob, they do nothing. They work for their own selves. So they do not represent Kenya. They do not represent Tanzania. They represent their own jobs. When will my term end? Will I be sacked? So the African Union and IGAD should be the Robbie fronts for South Sudan. Because Torit here in the South Sudan is actually boiling with people. And IGAD is busy writing papers. I don't know where they present those papers to. So I think it is the inability of the institutions we have put in place that have failed us. It's not countries, it's our mandated institutions.
All right. Musamali?
Debarl, I feel Southern Sudan is going to become a big problem to East Africa, as Peter said, if we don't deal with the problem right now. And basically, I see a situation whereby there's no political will to deal with that problem, especially from the regional leaders. As he has said, we're seeing a situation whereby leaders have taken sides. There are people that are pro-Dinka and we have people that are pro-Nuer. And this is actually prolonging this war. People are dying in Southern Sudan. The world is giving up in on South Sudan. If you look at what the UN said quite recently, they feel like they should withdraw. Already we've seen countries pulling out their troops. Japan did it the other day. And if this is a situation that we are going to allow to continue, definitely we are going to see repercussions across the border. Let me talk about Kenya. A month ago, the Taposa crossed over to a place known as Kibish. If you know Kibish, they killed 4 GSU officers. This was not reported in local media, but it's happening. So this conflict that is happening in Southern Sudan is directly affecting us. Look at the firearms that are being used in Laikipia. Where do these arms come from? Look at the arms that are being used in Kerio Valley. These are the arms that are crossing the border from South Sudan to come and cause anarchy in Kenya. So basically, let us look at South Sudan as a regional problem. Let us put institutions in place and find a lasting solution to Southern Sudan. If it means putting sanctions, because as he has said, most of the South Sudanese leaders live in Nairobi. They have property here. Their families are here. Yet they are allowing people to be killed in Southern Sudan. So unless the regional leaders take a stand on this and come up with measures that will ensure that we are not having people living a luxurious life, yet they are the source of problems to their own people back in their country, we are not going to see an end of this. And we should also agree that here we are dealing with a tribal conflict. Tribal conflicts are not easy to deal with. All over the world. Let's go to Yemen. There was a tribal conflict in Yemen. It took so long for that problem to be handled. Let's go to South Vietnam. Even the Americans tried to put their foot in in Vietnam. They failed miserably. They tried it in Beirut. They failed miserably. So the South Sudanese people should also accept that this is their problem and they should find solutions to these problems themselves. You cannot help a people who are not ready to help themselves.
Okay, are these institutions also working? Because we're talking of AU, we're talking of IGAD, and where people are actually twiddling their thumbs in the office. But we understand in 2015, I think AU was given that particular mandate to actually try people who have committed crimes against humanity and gross human rights violations as well. Has anything really happened on that front? Because we know, of course, these leaders, they've violated, human rights. These are war crimes that we know, but AU has not in any way. We've never heard of any case, or either Riek Machar or Salva Kiir. I know he's sitting. Does he also enjoy some immunity when it comes to war crimes?
No, actually, nobody should enjoy immunity when it comes to war crimes. And the agreement is very clear on the transitional justice. It was agreed that a hybrid court, because of the lack of strong institution in South Sudan, it was agreed that you need a hybrid court that will be made up of South Sudanese judges and African judges to try those who bear the most responsibilities for the crimes that have been committed during the conflict. And this was supposed to be done by the African Union. African Union has not made any move whatsoever to establishing this court. In fact, sometimes you wonder really what is going on. That they're busy talking about pulling out of the ICC because they think ICC is biased against them and that they need their own judicial mechanism. And here is a chance to actually show what can they actually do. This is not about UN. Nobody is there, just Africans and South Sudanese judges. Yet they are not moving on it. They show no interest. Other countries, in fact, America pledged $5 million to help get the technical process rolling for the establishment of this court. The African Union did not even take that money. African Union did not take that money. So now you have crimes that are being committed. There is any mechanism for accountability. South Sudanese leaders, last time before they fought again, when Machar came back to Juba, he and Salva Kiir, they wrote an op-ed in New York Times, arguing that there should be no accountability, there should be no court. All they need is a reconciliation and a healing process, but nobody should be held accountable for crimes. The only mechanism going on in town now is a UN Human Rights Commission that was recently given a mandate to collect and preserve evidence, because if the evidence is not being collected, the war is continued, then this evidence can be destroyed, and once there is no evidence, you cannot really prosecute anybody. So at least that mechanism is going on, but it is African Union that is supposed to be driving this process for accountability. But the reason why African Union is not acting is because of the problem in the region, because if you see from the very beginning, Museveni intervened in South Sudan conflict and took side with Salva Kiir. And then Bashir start supporting Riek Machar. Now Kenya and Ethiopia are sort of like neutral. They remain. But then we start seeing this business where Kenya was colluding with South Sudanese security to kidnap people that are registered as refugees in this country, to kidnap them and take them to South Sudan without any due process of law. All right? This was happening here in Kenya.
Thank you.
So this problem, Debarl, they need African Union to help us address them.
Of which they're not doing. And of course, also that is directly affecting us as well as a country. If you look at today's Business Daily, we can see KCB is closing South Sudan branches over war turmoil. That is what we have also on the front page of the Business Daily. You can see there, and it says East African biggest bank by assets, KCB Group plans to shut down some of its branches in South Sudan, starting civil strife, devaluation of country's currency, and hyperinflation, which negatively impacted the lender's earnings last year. Right, let's hear what you have to say as well on Yose, which Usha Jose is holding up next.
Right, so it would seem you have a lot to say about this. I've been looking at the comments and we have a record 53 comments. I think that is the highest this year, and I think that's very amazing because every Kenyan should take part in these conversations. You should be very interested in the general direction that this country is going to, and you should try to play a role in steering it. So I'm going to get straight to reading your comments. The question was, should the presidential results be announced at the constituency level? And we have Mogoa Alfano who says, presidential results should be announced at the constituency level if we want free and fair elections, nothing less. Anything else will spin us into another chaotic chapter that we experienced in 2007, 2008. Martin Maura says, I would prefer somewhere like a county level or national level where all agents are. At constituency level, especially in strongholds, all agents are most likely not there because of fear of intimidation, and there is room for manipulation. We have Umar Kelvin, who says that will be a good and trustable results and will help the risk of rigging in the IEBC tallying square, where some unknown digits pop in the computer database and are announced as final results. We have Joshua Chege, who says no, not at all after what we saw in the nominations, results being announced in the bush or even counted in the bush, no. We have finally Patrick Kimtai, who says no way. Returning officers are not trustworthy. The results might be manipulated at the constituency after being declared. It could cause problems. And as you can see, it goes on and on. We will keep the conversation going even off air on social media, so do keep your comments coming. Moving on to Twitter, which was a raft of issues not tied down to the question. We have John Gidanga, who says gambling and betting is a dangerous fad and skewed lifestyle that can demote the value of hard work, especially among uptown youth. We also have Ali, who says, yes, results for presidential election must be declared at the constituency. National tallying centers can't be trusted. We have Kennedy, who says it should in fact be announced at polling stations unless IEBC is telling us that it doesn't trust its employees. We have Crispus, who says the independence of a candidate is defined by ideology. These guys have no ideology different from political parties. I think this would be on the topic of independent candidates. And we have Ken Mokaya, who says we have no political parties in this country. Our politics are centered on individuals, not parties. And finally, we have John Githanga again, who says announcing presidential results at constituency level will surely cause confusion that might culminate into violence. So got a lot more tweets coming in. Thank you for your feedback. Do keep it coming. As you can see, I think people are divided on where exactly results should be announced. Over to you, Debarl.
Right, many thanks indeed, Usha there. And we can see, yes, those informations and the sentiments of the people trickling in as well. Where you stand as far as this is concerned, should the presidential results be announced from the constituency level? We've had this particular case also being appealed by NASA or the IBC, and we are still eagerly waiting to see where it will go. So that is still a developing story, so to speak. And let's get back to our panelists as well. You can hear the sentiments of the Kenyans as well in regard to the IBC appealing this particular ruling by the courts that the presidential results should be announced from the constituency level. Let's just also be giving our headline thoughts on this. I think we were in South Sudan, and this is, of course, we normally discuss a raft of other issues, and that is just part of what we're discussing earlier as well, if you're joining us as well. Right, maybe I can pick your mind, Captain Wanderi, on South Sudan, where we're headed to. What is the way forward?
Debarl, the African Union must come to realize that South Sudan is their baby. It's the youngest state in the world. And it has virtually existed since 2011 as a new state. But 3.5 years of its existence has been in turmoil and conflict. And if the African Union wants to be taken seriously as a regional body and to have its voice in the international arena, it is time now that they acted on the case of South Sudan as their first, as the first case that they would show that they can act and resolve a conflict within the African continent. We saw ECOWAS put their foot down and resolve the conflict in the Gambia. Now the conflict in South Sudan, if it is not managed well, is likely to have a spillover. And the spillover is already beginning to show into Kenya, into northern Uganda, Central African Republic, the Sudan in the north, and Ethiopia. And if we continue to have small arms circulating in South Sudan with a hungry population, because you cannot talk of political stability and economic prosperity to a people who are hungry. You cannot talk that. You cannot even enforce security on such people, because they will demand existential existential space, and they will demand it by the use of arms. This we must not allow. We have a conflict in Somalia which has now taken 26 years from 1991. If we are not careful, South Sudan is likely to even take longer.
Right.
And this we should not allow.
All right. Maybe we should also try and talk about the four Kenyans who are in Sudan, because given to understand also the families, as I got yesterday a message here that they will be hosting another vigil this coming Thursday, which is tomorrow, the 4th of May, at Jivanji Gardens, starting 6 p.m. And this is only just to push the envelope on what is happening in South Sudan. We want to know what is the development with the Free Sudan 4, because we saw, yes, the High Court or people are appealing for renunciation of that particular ruling that they should be jailed for 75 years.
Debarl, you know, my position on this has been that since the court in Sudan pronounced itself, the Kenyan government ought to have moved this further. And I say this matter already left the arena of international relations. Because if you listen to Peter carefully when he opened the statement about this, he said the corruption case. Because I already sounded a warning here that whereas people in Kenya may look at this as a case of unfair incarceration of their citizens, in South Sudan, that is not the position the people are taking. The people, and Peter will confirm this, take it that Kenyans were involved in massive corruption. And the South Sudanese population seems to have this feeling that we have exported our corruption. So, the best we can do for our brothers in South Sudan is ask for the reciprocal transfer of these people as prisoners, because we have a law in Kenya to that effect. And the Attorney General should take that. And if the Attorney General were to bring them here, and then even commute, a president commute that sentence because of various considerations, that would be a better way and an easier way.
Let's see from Peter. You were privy to this particular story. Yes. I know you're still in Cambridge. I don't know if...
No, I know very well.
You know it very well.
Yes.
Yeah, would you mind just telling us to what extent now has the government of South Sudan moved, especially with the ruling or the appeal court, trying to renounce this particular pronouncement from the courts?
Yes, so what happened, the late thing that happened is, basically this case is very serious. It's very important to stress that. It involves forgery of the signature of the president of South Sudan to get money out of central bank in millions. Okay?
Forgery.
Forgery. So to the extent that they are forging the signature of the president himself and the seal of the republic. One of the gentlemen who employed these 4 Kenyans was an intelligence officer in South Sudan government, but he doubled up as a businessman, and he was given the contract to basically produce the seal of the president. And also, he's the one who electronically captured the signature of the president. And then he also is the one that has the business of supplying stationeries for office of the president. So he has his own stamp. He already has the signature of the president, and he has the letterheads. And he basically just write his own letters to the central bank to get the money. So this is a serious case of treason. It's not just only the 4 Kenyans, there's 14 others. They've been sentenced to life in prison. The problem is the sentence and punishment was uniform for everybody, regardless of the degree, you know, because not everybody has committed the same degree of crime. But our court made this mistake. So I think a few weeks ago, there was a ruling by a court of appeal saying that this was a miscarriage of justice, and they ordered a retrial. But they say the accused should be held in the prison until the retrial is finished. So I think the thing now, it will likely go back to court, and it will be dealt with at that level. Now the problem is this: our entire judiciary is on strike. They're demanding that the Chief Justice be fired. And second, they're demanding that their salaries be increased. Basically, the inflation in South Sudan is increasing on 50 percentage points every month. Is essentially hyperinflation.
So it means
the salaries are not worth anything.
So it means also this case will take longer.
There's no business at judiciary, and I don't think there will be any business at judiciary until the fundamental crisis of the country, the war and the economy are addressed.
Thank you. Gentlemen.